The gymnasium exploded with applause as graduates walked across the stage. I clutched my bouquet of daisies, my heart swelling with pride. 67 years old, and I still got butterflies watching my granddaughter achieve her dreams. Madison spotted me in the bleachers and froze. Her face twisted with disgust as she leaned toward her friends. Her voice carried more than she probably intended. God, she looks pathetic, like cheap charity. She shouldn't even be here. The kids around her snickered. My smile trembled like a leaf in the wind. The flowers suddenly felt heavy in my shaking hands. I caught Madison's eye and mouthed the words I'd been saving all day. I'm proud of you. She rolled her eyes and turned away. The applause around me felt distant now, like I was underwater. Other grandparents beamed and waved, but I felt invisible. Worse than invisible. I felt like an embarrassment. I slipped out the side door before the ceremony ended. My chest hurt, but not from my old heart condition. This was different. This was the pain of loving someone who was ashamed of you. In the parking lot, I sat in my car, staring at nothing. What had I done wrong? The drive home felt endless. Madison's words replayed in my head like a broken record. Cheap charity. Shouldn't even be here. My knuckles were white against the steering wheel. I'd saved for months to buy that dress. It wasn't designer, but it was clean and pressed. I'd even gotten my hair done at the salon downtown. All I wanted was to look nice for her special day. My phone buzzed with messages. The family group chat was flooding with photos from proud parents and grandparents. Graduation caps flying in the air, families hugging and crying happy tears. But nothing from Madison. Not a single word. I pulled into my driveway but didn't get out. Instead, I sat there staring at my glove compartment. Inside were the trust fund documents I'd been carrying around, waiting for the right moment to surprise her. $860,000. My life savings, meant to launch her future. The papers felt heavier now. I'd worked double shifts at the diner for 40 years to save that money. Every penny was earned with aching feet and a smile I forced for rude customers. All for her. All for this moment that had turned into my worst nightmare. 2 years ago at Christmas, I'd stayed up every night for 6 months making Madison a quilt. My fingers were stiff from arthritis, but I pushed through the pain. Each stitch was sewn with love in her favorite colors. Madison tore open the wrapping paper and laughed. Not the good kind of laugh. The cruel kind that cuts deep. Really? This is so old. Mom was right. You don't get what nice things are. Everyone at the table joined in the laughter. My son chuckled. My daughter-in-law smirked. Even Madison's little cousin giggled. Nobody defended me. Nobody said the quilt was beautiful or asked how long it took to make. I forced a smile that felt like swallowing glass. I thought it might keep you warm at college, I said quietly. Madison shrugged and tossed it aside for the designer bag her parents had bought. Later that night, I found the quilt crumpled on the floor near the trash. I folded it carefully, tears dripping onto the fabric I'd chosen so carefully. In my bedroom, I whispered to myself, I worked on this for 6 months. The quilt now sat in my closet, unused and unloved. Just like me. Last summer at the family barbecue, I offered Madison a ride to meet her friends. She groaned like I'd suggested walking through fire. Grandma, can you drop me 2 blocks away? People might see me in that thing. My old sedan wasn't fancy, but it was reliable. I'd driven it for 15 years without a single breakdown. The seats were worn but clean. The radio still worked fine. Her parents just chuckled. You know how teenagers are, Mom, my daughter-in-law said, like Madison's behavior was cute instead of hurtful. I dropped her off 2 blocks away as requested. She didn't say goodbye or thank you, just grabbed her purse and ran toward the group of kids standing by their luxury cars. I sat alone on a bench at the barbecue, sipping lukewarm lemonade. Everyone else had someone to talk to, someone who wanted their company. I watched Madison laugh with her friends, animated and happy. She was only cruel when I was around. The lemonade tasted bitter, but not as bitter as the realization that my own granddaughter was ashamed of me. I went home early that day, claiming I had a headache. It wasn't entirely a lie. Back in my kitchen after graduation, I spread the congratulations cards across the table. I'd bought them weeks ago, imagining Madison's smile when she read my proud words. Now they felt like evidence of my foolishness. The trust fund documents sat in front of me like a judgment. $860,000. I could buy myself a nice car, a fancy house, designer clothes. I could be the grandmother Madison wanted, if money was all that mattered. But I'd earned every dollar the hard way. 40 years of serving coffee and pie to people who barely noticed I existed. My feet still ached from all those years of standing. My back was permanently bent from leaning over tables to clear dishes. I did all this for her, and she hates me for existing. The thought hit me like a physical blow. For the first time, doubt crept in. Maybe she doesn't deserve it. The folder creaked as I opened it. Legal papers, bank statements, beneficiary forms, all with Madison's name written in careful cursive. My whole life's work reduced to black ink on white paper. Maybe it was time to make some changes. I spread the documents across my kitchen table like a general planning a battle. The legal language was clear. I had full control of the trust fund because it was my money, not Madison's. I could keep it, spend it, donate it. No one could stop me. My anger wasn't hot anymore. It was cold and logical, like ice forming on a window. If she thinks I'm cheap charity, maybe I'll show her what real charity looks like. I'd never been the type to make rash decisions. Every major choice in my life had been carefully considered. This wouldn't be different. I pulled out a notebook and started making lists. Local organizations that needed help. Kids who deserved scholarships more than Madison deserved a free ride. The children's library had been asking for donations to rebuild their computer lab. The community center needed funding for after-school programs. The food bank was always running low on supplies. These people appreciated help when it came. They said thank you and meant it. I picked up the phone and dialed my financial advisor. "Hello, Peter? It's Adele Harper. I need to schedule a meeting about redirecting some funds." My voice was steady, sure. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. Peter's office smelled like leather and coffee. I sat across from his mahogany desk, sipping tea from a china cup while he explained the paperwork. His eyebrows had shot up when I told him my plans, but he didn't question my decision. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Mrs. Harper?" he asked, sliding the forms across the desk. "Once these donations are made, they can't be reversed." I signed my name with steady hands. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. The first donation would go to rebuild the local children's library. I remembered taking Madison there when she was small, before she learned to be ashamed of simple pleasures. She used to love story time, sitting cross-legged on the carpet with the other kids. Those were better days when she hugged me tight and called me her favorite grandma, before she learned that having money was more important than being kind. Before her parents taught her to look down on people like me. I left the bank feeling lighter than I had in months. The morning sun felt warmer on my face. For the first time since graduation, I smiled genuinely. This felt right. This felt like justice. 3 days later, Madison burst through my front door without knocking. She flopped onto my couch, like she owned the place, already complaining before her purse hit the floor. "I need money for clothes before college," she announced. "You're paying, right?" I saw the cutest dress at the mall, but it's like super expensive. I continued folding laundry, keeping my voice calm. "Not right now, sweetheart." Her head snapped up like I'd slapped her. "What do you mean not right now? You always give me money when I ask." "I've been reconsidering my spending lately," I said, smoothing out a wrinkled shirt. "I want to make sure my money goes to worthy causes." Madison scoffed, her face twisting with disgust. "What's the point of having a rich grandma if you're going to act poor? God, you're so embarrassing." She stomped out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I watched her storm down the sidewalk, her designer shoes clicking angrily on the pavement. For once, her tantrum didn't hurt me. If anything, I felt almost amused. She had no idea what was coming. Word spread quickly through our small town about a mystery donor funding scholarships for underprivileged kids. The local newspaper ran a story about the generous benefactor who wished to remain anonymous. I read it over my morning coffee, hiding a smile. My daughter called me that afternoon, gossiping about the donations. "Can you believe someone's just throwing money away on strangers?" she said. "Some people have more money than sense. Good thing you're saving for Madison instead of pulling stunts like that." I murmured, stirring sugar into my tea. If only she knew. The next week, I signed papers for another donation, this time to the community food bank that fed dozens of families every month. I'd volunteered there occasionally, packing boxes for people who reminded me of myself at their age. Hardworking, proud, struggling to make ends meet. The bank manager shook my hand warmly. "This is incredibly generous, Mrs. Harper. You're going to make a real difference in people's lives." I thought about Madison's designer purses and expensive shoes, about her friends with their luxury cars and endless shopping trips. None of them would make half the difference this money would make in the right hands. Sunday dinner at my son's house felt different now. I sat quietly while Madison complained about my recent cheapness, as she called it. Her whining voice grated on my nerves like fingernails on a chalkboard. "Grandma's being totally weird lately," she told her father. "She won't give me money for anything. It's like she forgot she's supposed to spoil me." My son just laughed, cutting his roast beef with more force than necessary. "Mom's always been tight with money, kiddo. Don't take it personal. She'll come around." I folded my napkin carefully, placing it beside my plate. I just believe in spending wisely these days, making sure my money goes where it's truly needed and appreciated. Madison rolled her eyes so hard I worried they might fall out of her head. "Whatever. You're being totally ridiculous." I smiled serenely and asked for seconds on the green beans. This would be the last time I sat quietly while they dismissed my feelings. I was done being the family doormat. From now on, they'd have to earn my respect just like everyone else. The decision felt liberating, like taking off shoes that were too tight. Over the next month, I quietly continued my donations. Art programs for at-risk youth got new supplies. Single mothers received scholarships to finish their education. The community garden bloomed with new equipment and seeds. The local newspaper featured my photo, though they still didn't know my identity as the mystery donor. I was pictured smiling with a group of children planting sunflowers in the community garden. Their faces were bright with joy and hope. Madison didn't even notice the article, though it ran on the front page. She was too busy shopping with her friends, posting pictures of her purchases on social media. Her Instagram was a parade of expensive handbags and restaurant meals. An invitation arrived in my mailbox, Madison's college send-off party. Her parents were throwing a big celebration before she left for school. The thick cardstock and gold lettering probably cost more than some families spent on groceries in a month. I RSVP'd yes with a small smile. It was time for the final act of this play. Time for Madison and her parents to learn exactly who they'd been dismissing all these years. I had a feeling this party would be memorable for everyone involved. The night before the party, I laid out my clothes carefully. A simple cream blouse and my mother's pearl earrings. Nothing fancy, nothing that would make Madison ashamed to be seen with me. Though after tomorrow, her opinion wouldn't matter much. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea, looking at the trust fund documents one last time. Most of the money was already gone, donated to people who would use it to build better lives. Only a small amount remained, enough for my own modest needs. My reflection in the dark window looked calm, resolved. I'd spent my whole life being quiet, being overlooked, being treated like my feelings didn't matter. Tomorrow, I would finally speak up for myself. The house felt peaceful in the silence. No one demanding money from me. No one criticizing my clothes or my car or my simple way of living. Just me and the satisfaction of knowing I'd done the right thing. Tomorrow, I whispered to the empty room, they'll finally listen. And for once, I wouldn't be speaking softly. I'd make sure every word was heard loud and clear. The party was already in full swing when I arrived. Madison's parents had transformed their backyard into something from a magazine. String lights everywhere, elegant tables, and a catered buffet that probably cost more than I spent on food in 3 months. Madison held court near the pool, stunning in a new designer dress. She was surrounded by friends who hung on her every word, laughing at jokes that weren't funny and agreeing with opinions that weren't thought through. She spotted me by the gate and her smile faltered for just a moment. Then she recovered, painting her fake smile back on. "Grandma, I'm so glad you finally dressed decent for once." I smiled politely, unfazed by her backhanded compliment. "Thank you, dear. You look lovely too." Her parents were making the rounds, playing the perfect hosts. My son caught my eye and walked over with his wife trailing behind. "Mom, we're so glad you could make it. This is such a special day for Madison." "Indeed it is," I agreed, patting my purse where the trust fund documents waited. "A very special day for all of us." My daughter-in-law clapped her hands together. "Everyone, Adele has something special to share with Madison." The chatter died down as I stood, raising my glass of sparkling cider. All eyes turned to me. The quiet grandmother who never made speeches, never demanded attention, never caused scenes. "I've worked hard my entire life," I began, my voice carrying clearly across the yard. 40 years of double shifts at the diner, saving every penny I could. I managed to put away nearly $1 million. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Madison's friends whispered to each other, suddenly looking at me with new interest. Money had a way of making people pay attention. "I planned to give it all to family," I continued, watching Madison's face carefully. "But I learned that respect is part of any gift worth giving." Madison blinked rapidly, confusion clouding her features. She'd never considered where her future money would come from. She just assumed it would always be there, like electricity or running water. "What do you mean, Grandma?" she asked, her voice smaller than usual. I took a sip of my cider, letting the moment stretch out. Everyone was listening now. Finally, I had their full attention. "So, I've used most of it already," I said, my voice steady and calm. "Libraries rebuilt, scholarships funded, children fed. I wanted the money to matter, to help people who would appreciate it." Madison's face went white as paper. Her hands started shaking. You can't do that. That money is mine. You promised it to me." I met her gaze directly, no longer the meek grandmother who absorbed her cruelty in silence. "It was never yours, sweetheart. It was a gift I planned to give. But gifts are earned through love and respect." The yard went dead quiet except for the soft bubbling of the pool filter. Madison's friends stared with their mouths open. Her parents looked like they'd been struck by lightning. "I actually did promise you something once," I continued. "I promised I'd always love you no matter what. And I do. But love doesn't mean accepting disrespect or cruelty." Madison's perfect makeup was starting to run as tears gathered in her eyes. "You've ruined my life. How am I supposed to pay for college? How am I supposed to live?" "The same way I did," I replied gently. "Through hard work, determination, and treating people with kindness. You might be surprised how far those qualities can take you." Madison's composure completely shattered. "You can't do this to me," she screamed, her voice cracking with panic. "That money was supposed to be mine. You led me to believe." "I led you to believe nothing," I interrupted, setting down my glass with a soft clink. "You assumed you were entitled to money you never earned, from a grandmother you treated like garbage." Her parents stood frozen, their faces cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been shame. The other adults at the party whispered among themselves. Some looked scandalized, but others nodded with what looked like approval. "I didn't ruin your life, Madison," I continued. "I invested my money in people who deserved it. Children who say thank you when someone helps them. Families who treat their elders with respect." Madison looked around desperately for support, but her friends had taken several steps back. Nothing killed teenage loyalty faster than the disappearance of money. "You're crazy," she shouted. "You're a mean, bitter old woman who doesn't understand how the world works." I picked up my purse and headed for the gate. "I understand perfectly how the world works, dear. Actions have consequences. You're about to learn that lesson firsthand." Within a week, the whole town was talking. The story spread like wildfire. The quiet grandmother who donated nearly $1 million to charity instead of giving it to her spoiled granddaughter. The local newspaper picked it up, then the regional papers. I became something of a local celebrity. People stopped me at the grocery store to shake my hand and thank me for supporting the community. The librarian hugged me with tears in her eyes. The food bank director sent a handwritten note describing the families I'd helped feed. Madison, meanwhile, found herself whispered about as that spoiled girl who lost nearly $1 million. Her social media posts about shopping trips and expensive restaurants took on a different tone when people knew the money had dried up. I was tending my garden one morning, enjoying the peace and quiet, when I heard footsteps on the gravel path behind me. I didn't turn around immediately. I was savoring the morning sun on my face and the smell of my tomato plants. "Grandma?" The voice was hesitant, uncertain. Nothing like Madison's usual demanding tone. I looked over my shoulder to see her standing by my garden gate, hands shoved deep in her pockets. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a plain t-shirt. Madison stood awkwardly by the fence, shifting her weight from foot to foot. Her usual confidence was nowhere to be seen. "Grandma, can I help you with the garden?" I studied her face for a moment, looking for signs of manipulation or false sincerity. But her eyes were different, sadder, maybe, but also more real than I'd seen them in years. Without a word, I handed her a pair of gardening gloves. They were old and stained, nothing like the pristine manicures she used to maintain. She took them without complaint and knelt in the dirt beside me. We worked in silence for almost an hour. Madison pulled weeds without being told which ones to remove. She was gentle with the seedlings, careful not to damage their tender roots. Her manicured nails got dirty, but she didn't seem to care. "The tomatoes are looking good this year," I commented, testing the waters. "Yeah," she agreed quietly. "I remember helping you plant them when I was little." I remembered that too. Back when she thought spending time with me was fun instead of embarrassing. Back when she hugged me goodbye and meant it. Maybe, just maybe, that little girl was still in there somewhere. We were nearly finished weeding when Madison suddenly stopped and sat back on her heels. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, Grandma, for everything. You didn't deserve how I treated you." I kept my hands busy with the soil, considering her words. Apologies were easy. Anyone could say sorry when they finally faced consequences. The real question was whether she meant it. "I was horrible to you," she continued, tears making tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. "You worked so hard to save that money, and I expected it, like I was entitled to it just for existing." I looked at her then, really looked. Her face was different, not just because of the tears and dirt, but because the cruelty was gone. The sneering superiority had been replaced by something I hadn't seen in years: humility. "Actions speak louder than words, darling," I said softly. "Keep showing me." She nodded and picked up her gardening gloves again. We finished the row in comfortable silence. When she left an hour later, she hugged me goodbye. Really hugged me, not the perfunctory squeeze she used to give. Maybe there was hope for us after all. Madison kept coming back. Every few days, she'd show up at my garden gate with those same work gloves, ready to help with whatever needed doing. She pulled weeds, watered plants, and helped me harvest vegetables to take to the food bank. The change in her was gradual but unmistakable. She started volunteering at the community garden I'd helped fund, working with kids from the local elementary school. I watched from my kitchen window as she taught them to plant seeds, her patience endless, even when they spilled soil everywhere. The town began to notice her transformation. The same people who'd whispered about her entitlement started commenting on her community service. The food bank director mentioned how helpful she'd become with organizing donations. "Your granddaughter is quite a young woman," the librarian told me one afternoon. "She's been reading to the children during story time. They absolutely adore her." I felt a warm glow of pride, carefully tempered with caution. Madison was making progress, but trust had to be earned back slowly. Still, watching her laugh with those children reminded me of the sweet little girl she used to be. One evening, I found myself unlocking a drawer in my bedroom dresser, pulling out an envelope I'd written months ago. The letter was sealed in cream-colored stationery, my careful handwriting covering both sides of the paper. I'd written it after making my first donation, when I was angry and hurt but still hoped things might change. "If you're reading this," the letter began, "it means I'm gone. But I wanted you to have something because you learned what truly matters in life." Inside the envelope were the keys to my house. Not worth nearly as much as the trust fund had been, but something real and solid. A place she could call home when she was ready to appreciate it. I'd also included the deed to my garden plot and instructions for maintaining the plants. The tomatoes needed careful attention. The roses required specific fertilizer. The herb garden had to be harvested at just the right time. These weren't things you could buy with money. They required patience, dedication, and love. If Madison had truly changed, she would understand their value. If she hadn't, well, at least I'd know I tried. I placed the letter back in the drawer and turned the key. Someday, when I was no longer around to see her growth, she would find this final gift. I hoped by then she would be worthy of it. 3 years later, I passed quietly in my sleep on a Tuesday morning in spring. The garden was in full bloom, tended carefully by Madison, who had become my constant companion in those final months. She found me peaceful in my bed, surrounded by photos of our happiest memories. The two of us planting sunflowers, harvesting tomatoes, reading together on the porch swing I'd bought with some of the trust fund money I'd kept for simple pleasures. Madison handled my funeral arrangements with quiet dignity. She chose wildflowers over expensive arrangements, remembering how I'd always preferred the beauty of things that grew naturally. She invited the people I'd helped with my donations, families from the food bank, scholarship recipients, children from the library programs. Later that afternoon, she sat on my porch going through the few possessions I'd left behind. My recipe box filled with handwritten cards, my garden journals documenting years of planting seasons, a photo album full of memories from her childhood when we'd been close. At the bottom of my jewelry box, she found the sealed envelope with her name written in my familiar script. Her hands shook as she opened it, and the keys to my house fell into her lap with a soft metallic sound. Tears blurred Madison's vision as she read my final words. "The house is yours now. Take care of it, and take care of the people who visit it. You've learned that love is about service, not entitlement. I'm proud of the woman you've become." She pressed the letter to her chest and whispered, She trusted me after all. For the first time, she really looked at my house. Not as the embarrassing place where her unfashionable grandmother lived, but as a home filled with love and memories. She hugged the chipped porch railing, appreciating every dent and scratch that told the story of my life. The garden bloomed around her, tended by hands that had learned the value of hard work. The tomato plants were heavy with fruit that would feed families at the food bank. The roses I'd planted climbed the trellis in a riot of color and fragrance. Children's laughter drifted from the community garden nearby, where Madison now spent her Saturday mornings teaching kids to plant and grow and appreciate the simple miracle of seeds becoming food. She understood now what I'd been trying to teach her all along, that real wealth came from the lives you touched, not the money you accumulated. Madison made my house her home, but she changed very little. She kept my furniture, my books, even my collection of ceramic roosters that she'd once mocked. The kitchen still smelled like the vanilla candles I'd burned while cooking Sunday dinners. Every morning, she sat on my porch with her coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. Children walked to school past my garden, often stopping to pick a flower or grab a ripe tomato with her permission. She waved to them just like I used to do. The trust fund was long gone, donated to causes that continued to bear fruit. The library's computer lab helped kids with their homework. The food bank fed hungry families. The scholarships sent deserving students to college who would never have had the chance otherwise. Madison worked now, a job at the community center, coordinating volunteer programs and helping families in need. The work didn't pay much, but it filled her heart in ways shopping never had. One afternoon, a little girl from the neighborhood knocked on the door. "Miss Madison, can you teach me to plant flowers like Mrs. Harper used to do?" Madison smiled, hearing an echo of my voice in her response. Madison knelt in the garden with the little girl, showing her how to make holes just the right depth for seeds. Her hands were dirty now, permanently stained with soil and honest work. She wore my old gardening apron, the one with pockets full of everything needed to nurture growing things. "My grandma taught me this," she told the child, just as I had taught her. "You have to be patient with plants. They grow in their own time, but if you take care of them, they'll give you something beautiful." The little girl nodded seriously, handling the seeds with the reverence Madison had learned to show for small, precious things. As they worked together, Madison felt my presence in the warm sun on her shoulders and the rich smell of earth between her fingers. When the child's mother came to collect her, she thanked Madison with tears in her eyes. You're just like Mrs. Harper was, she said, always making time for everyone. Alone in the garden as evening fell, Madison whispered to the gentle breeze that rustled through my roses, "Thank you, Grandma, I get it now." And somewhere in the sound of wind through leaves and the laughter of children playing nearby, I think she heard my answer. "I know you do, sweetheart. I always knew you would."